Hey, welcome to another episode on the People Productivity Channel, a place to become a better you. On this channel, we interview real people who have real life stories and experiences to share that you can learn from and apply in your own life to actually do better. Today we have on David Trapani. Dave is actually a friend. He's also a business owner. He's done an incredible job in sales over time. And the interesting thing about life is even if you're not in sales, you are selling. Influence is a very important part of life. And in some way or another, we're all selling a little bit all the time. So even though you're not in sales, you can learn a lot about how to sell better. And I thought, our audience would really enjoy getting a bit of a lesson on some sales techniques, practices, learn a few things. Maybe you'll get real interested in sales and actually want to do it for a living. You never know. So without further ado, Dave, maybe you could just share a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Sure. Again, Dave Trapani from Sandler Training. My office is based out of Monmouth Junction, New Jersey, and we help folks in the world of business development. So typically these folks are struggling on getting more deals closed or getting decisions going in their direction, or maybe it's finding better opportunities in their network and growing their business to another level. I've been at Sandler. We're in our 10th year here. Had a pretty successful career prior to Sandler, but absolutely love what we're doing. And I think I think you teed it up well, Frank. In the world, people are selling all the time. And I think the beauty of Sandler is beyond the sales training, a lot of feedback that we get from our clients is how much this has helped them in their personal lives, in their professional lives, at home, in work. And so I think what we talked about today probably could benefit a few folks, whether they're in business development or not.
Yeah. So I guess you would say right off the bat, anybody can sell better if they just learn some techniques, right? No matter what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody can get things going the direction that they want, and maybe help get people going in the direction that they'd like them to go. Not always in a sales environment. Sometimes just in a life environment.
Yeah. Well, it is super important, but it does seem people struggle with sales. And, people in sales who do it for a living struggle with sales,
Yep.
right? I mean, there tons of them come to you and to Sandler. Sandler is, I think, one of the oldest sales training, companies worldwide, big, meet lots of people. It's amazing. Sales is something that I think everybody struggles with to some degree. Why is that the case?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. It's interesting. We did a recent study through Sandler Research, and don't hold me to the number specifically, but somewhere around 65% of salespeople are running at 65% or less of their plan. So yeah, the numbers do prove out that salespeople struggle, and I think it comes in a couple of different areas. One is people in general have to do things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Um,
for
and,
sure.
and and we're not all wired to do things that are outside of our comfort zone.
Mhm.
So I think that's one thing, is doing the activities we need to do day in, day out to be successful. I think a big part comes from what goes on between the ears. Let's move it right into that sales arena.
Yeah.
Sales is often viewed as a negative word. And sometimes folks don't put themselves, salespeople don't put themselves up on that pedestal of helping people all the time. And we call it head trash, but there's a lot of noise in between the ears of what I can do, what I can say, what I can achieve, that maybe limit our belief in ourselves. So those are a
Yeah.
couple areas.
Yeah, I listen, I think people have had talk in just about all areas of life,
Yeah.
and sales is hard because, I'm out selling too. And you're really, although you're really helping people in some ways, they think you're trying to force them to take a product from you. And so there's this little dance that goes on. But I have found that, a lot of sales is the ability to focus on other people's needs and wants. I mean, what would you add to that?
I think it's a great line, Frank. If salespeople, actually, if people in general took the notion of, I'm going to act in the best interest of the other party, And wherever this outcome lies will be good for both of us.
Mhm.
I think that that will give us the best outcomes possible. So let's look at that in the world of sales. You said something interesting. Most buyers are a little bit leery of salespeople, kind
Oh,
of
sure.
twisting your words a little bit,
Yes.
because
So
salespeople act in their best interest the majority of the time. The best salespeople typically are acting in their clients' or their prospects' best interest, doing the right things for their clients. And when that relationship occurs, it's a trusted advisor relationship,
Yep.
generally resulting in the best possible outcomes. So that again is our head. If we can get our head to operate in a spot where we're acting in the best interest of our clients and prospects, we're going to have better outcomes.
Yeah. So you're the consultant in there saying, let me understand, what you need, right? Right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Maybe being empathetic to their situation, right?
Absolutely. Got to listen. I've got to understand what you're looking for. And I'll
Mhm.
go back to my acting in best interest. A lot of folks look at what's in it for me and how can I take your issue and bend it into what I solve,
Yep.
as opposed to being empathetic,
Mhm.
being a great listener, asking great probing questions to understand what your issue is, and then determining, am I the best fit to solve your issue? That's acting in your client or prospect's best interest. And when I work in that space, best outcomes possible.
Yeah. So then, one of the key skills is listening, certainly, but also probing, right? Asking questions. I think people maybe they don't have enough questions sometimes. They haven't thought through. I mean, what do you see happening?
Oh man, this is a softball because the listening piece most people struggle with. So we really have to work on our listening skills. Really, as a society, we struggle with it. Then let's focus on this idea of asking questions. We've all been conditioned to answer questions.
Yeah.
So the notion of asking more questions really is out of the majority of us, it's out of our comfort zone. So we've got to train ourselves to be curious about the other person and interested in the other person. And when you start to piece those two things together, here's what happens. Most people are simply looking to be heard and understood. And when we put those listening and asking good questions together, we start to listen and we start to understand what exactly is going on with, again, it could be a prospect, it could be a client, it could be a family member, a friend, a colleague. But once we operate in that spot, we're really starting to improve and enhance that relationship.
Yeah. And how do you recommend to people who are selling something to tee up, hey, do you mind? I'm going to ask you questions. How do they tee it up so the person is receptive?
Yeah, and again, that's a great technique that we offer at Sandler. So I'll shortcut the technique. We have something that we call the upfront contract. It's a multi-step process in getting buyers and colleagues to lower their guard. But in that process, in that technique, one of the things that we suggest to salespeople
Yeah.
is, or this could be a manager to an employee relationship. This could be a salesperson to prospect relationship. It's let them know ahead of time that you're going to be asking them a lot of questions. So it might sound something like this. Hey, Frank, I'll be in your office next week for 30 minutes. Hey, while I'm there, I hope you're okay with it. I'm going to probably be asking you a bunch of questions to better understand what's going on with you, your organization, whatever it is. But letting them know ahead of time.
Hmm.
When you let people know ahead of time what's going to happen to them, they're typically way more receptive to having that conversation.
Yeah. 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 I think receptivity, my God, what could be more important than that, right? Then you've taken a lot of friction out of that interaction just immediately, right?
Absolutely. Let me just go backwards for a second. You talked about buyers being, and I'll use the term buyers, um, being a little bit hesitant to meet with salespeople,
Yeah.
maybe not so receptive. I think that's a good term. It's often because nobody told the buyer what was going to happen in that sales interaction. So when the buyer knows exactly what will happen during that interaction, their defenses are generally lowered. Their receptivity goes way up because they know exactly what's going to happen during the interaction.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, what could be more important than putting them at ease, right?
Absolutely.
Now, interestingly, I know from Sandler, and certainly I've taken some courses there too. I think it's just such a super place. But one of the things that really I found so interesting is that you can't rely on what you hear. It could be a bad idea because, a lot of information is being exchanged during an interaction and it's not all verbal. What has Sandler's research showed about this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll answer maybe with a little bit of a backdrop. Think about traditional selling. Think about traditionally folks trying to convince others of their ideas. And
Mm.
often they want to do it by pitching, by throwing out a lot of words. So let me
Yeah.
dazzle you with all of my great words and see if I can convince you to do something. Well, when you start to look at the communication pie chart, words only matter for about 7% of what messages are being carried across. So body language, tonality, they carry 93% of the conversation. So how I say things, how I use my facial expressions and my body language to get messages across is way more important than the words that are spoken. So
Yeah.
it's critically important to make sure that we've got our body language working, our tonality, and to advance that to another step. If I can identify, and I'll call it a prospect or I'll call it a colleague, somebody that I'm trying to get going in my direction,
Yeah.
tremendous bonding and rapport move is watching your body language, listening to your tonality, and mirroring and matching your body language and tonality allows my words to carry more weight because I'm now speaking in your language. So it's hit a little hidden trick there in how to get people beyond the words go in the direction you'd like them to go.
Yeah. A lot has been written on this whole notion of mirroring, where maybe explain a little bit about what that is to the audience because they have to pay attention to begin to follow those movements, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at mirroring and let's put into the context of a face-to-face meeting. So if I were selling to you, and again I'm going to use the term selling, I would be very in tune with the body language that you're putting out there. So people have different facial expressions. Some folks may lean on their hand and put their chin on their hand or cross their legs. And I'm teaching my folks that when they're in a sales setting,
Yeah.
identify the body language that's being put out there. And then what I want sales folks to do, or again, this could be managers or leaders. I want them to mirror, copy the body language that's occurring in that moment. And not to do it in a way where you get caught. We're not trying to be
Yeah.
overt here. You want to be natural. But if I can start to match and mirror some of your body language, your pace of talk, maybe how loud you are, how soft spoken you are, if I'm matching and mirroring that, we're creating a bond. And it's a very psychological, subconscious connection. I'll throw another little tidbit on here. I love to teach people this. I think many people understand matching and mirroring
Yeah.
pretty effectively. Excuse me. But one of the things that we can do is to determine whether or not we've made that subconscious connection
Yeah.
is I can change my body language. So if I were selling to you and I were in person, I might do something different than you. For example, I might fold my arms like this to give you the visual.
Hmm.
And if you copy me, or maybe it's multiple people in the room, if I see that they copy me, it sends me a signal that we've made a connection.
Ah.
So it's really taking that matching and mirroring and bringing it to another level to make sure that it's actually occurring. Super powerful. I think most people are aware of it. And I think in the world of sales and in the world of communication, we sometimes forget to do it.
Yeah. So, this is obviously true, whether they're on a sales call or working with a coworker, sitting down to discuss something. I mean, if they could build that type of rapport just in a meeting with a coworker where they have to discuss some important topics,
Absolutely.
how much more powerful would that be?
If you think of office relationships, senior leader talking to somebody that's maybe a little bit junior,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a nervousness. I know we want to eliminate that or reduce it as much as possible, but great bonding and rapport
Yeah.
could equal the playing field there and make it a much better um, conversation.
Yeah. And terms of conversation, they should also be what, paraphrasing or something, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, mirroring the language, the words. So what do they do? Just is that to show they're listening properly, right? Paying attention?
Yeah, yeah. So if you go back to the phrase, people like to be heard and understood. I was on the phone with a Sandler colleague yesterday, and it's just amazing to listen to other folks that are in our field. But I was sharing a challenge that one of our clients in his area was having, and he would stop me and he would say, "Dave, let me just pause for a second. Let me tell you what I think I just heard from you," and repeat back, paraphrase what I gave him. And I knew he understood exactly what we need to do with these folks. And it's just a very settling feeling that when you hit that same page, that you know that we're going to have much better productivity and much better outcomes for this client.
Yeah, so everything starts to relax. Now the body language is in tune, you've built that rapport, they know you're listening, so you're having a real conversation at that point,
Yes,
right? We're not going through the motions with people desperately trying to wait for the end of the meeting to get the hell out of there.
exactly, exactly. Yep, yep.
How many of those? And then, one of the other things that always comes up is kind of the mix of kind of listening and talking. So, we're telling people to ask a lot of questions, but what should they know about the mix of talking, asking questions, and listening?
Yeah, there are some guidelines here, and I'll be honest, I personally sometimes struggle with the balance of speech, but in theory, we should let the other party do 70% of the talking. That means that we're doing the majority of listening. We're asking a few questions so that folks are sharing information. We like to say we're there on a fact-finding mission, and the more information we gather, the better the outcome is going to be. So I
Mhm.
like to have prospects doing 70% of the talking, or even a colleague, and I'm doing 30% of the talking, hopefully in the form of questions, and maybe instead of perfecting my pitch, it's answering my ability or Sandler's ability to solve an issue without giving the whole story behind it.
Yeah.
Let them own this meeting. I think that that's also a tricky one because it goes back to if we're acting in their best interest.
Hmm.
To get someone to talk 70% of the time is not easy. And sometimes business development folks will see that as, is that a trick? Am I trying, what am I trying to do here? No, I really want to understand what you're going through so we can determine whether or not we can fix this together. And again, be it a sales issue, be it a personal issue, I want to have that really good understanding of what's going on. I want to act in your best interest. The only way I can do that is to let you do the majority of talking.
Yeah. And, these are all human skills, right? At the end of the
Oh,
day, empathy, listening, caring about the other person. I mean, that's at the end of the day what we're talking about. And I think, everybody could do better in these areas because they were never trained to be more human. Let's face it.
absolutely. You deal in the world of human impact, and you think of the things that you do in the workspace
Yeah.
and the carryover to home.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
just so it's life.
it's life, and if we can operate in that space all the time, act in the best interest of others all the time, think of the impact we have home, outside the home, and in the workplace. We will
Right.
have better results. And I think you guys are all about this, the better productivity, no doubt about it. But I've got to have that initial belief that I will act in the best interest of my fill in the blank.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just it happens to be more productive because you end up in a state of flow. You're in a real conversation with people. You're talking about things. You're making progress, and you've removed just all that friction. So this is true of sales and life, and it reminds me of that David Sandler quote that selling is a Broadway play put on by a psychiatrist. And tell the audience a little about that because that's really is a great insight into what this is. It's not about getting up and pitching your capabilities and leaving. That's just not what sales is.
Yeah. So let me put it into the world of selling. And we've said this a couple of times. The idea that folks are somewhat buyers are going to keep their information close to their vest. Put it into a management, a senior level and a junior level relationship in the workplace. That junior level person is often going to keep things close to their vest. So I might have to use some tactics and techniques from the world of psychology
Hmm.
in order to help you uncover what's really going on so that I can A, disarm you, so that B, you'll be more willing to share information. Ultimately, the psychology helps break down those barriers so that we can get to a place, and you've said this multiple times, where we can just have a straightforward conversation.
Yeah,
That's really where we're trying to go.
yeah. Trying to get that level of conversation going.
Yeah. And the world of I'm sorry, I'm stepping on you a little bit. The world, there goes my 70-30. The world of psychology does offer us a bunch of techniques and strategies and tools. And everything we teach at Sandler is based on the world of psychology. But that's what allows us to really help disarm folks. That's a lot of the techniques that we're teaching folks. Sometimes it gives us an unfair advantage,
Yeah,
but if we're acting again in the best interest of fill in the blank, that's okay because that's what we're trying to get to.
yeah. So, since we're on the topic of psychology and understand the individual, we talk about people and they want to think about their skills and how well they sell. Where do their selling instincts actually come from? What does the research show?
Yeah, I would struggle with the research, but I'll go into some of my own beliefs.
Yeah.
Um, and tell me if I'm answering your question correctly here. I believe, we'll hear the term he or she is a natural born salesperson. There's a few out there, but I think by and large, people can be trained in the world of business development. I
Mm.
have no doubt about it. If they have the right attitude and understand that sales is a process with techniques baked into it, anyone can be trained there. So people, I don't believe, are born to be salespeople. I think that they choose it. They make a decision that they're going to do things that maybe make them uncomfortable. But the ones that have a belief that they can be really good at this, they go out, typically, they get some training, they
They
do
do.
some things that are a little bit different than other salespeople so that they look and smell a little bit differently. But
Now
I
they
believe
did.
everybody can be trained.
Now they did, however, pick up some behaviors and other things growing up that may or may not be in the way, right? This parent ego state or whatever it's called, and
Yeah. So we also, yeah, great point, Frank. We've also been brought up in homes and households where we were all treated a little bit differently. So there are different ego states that we each carry. We each typically have, and I won't get into great detail, but a parent, an adult, and a child. And within each of those, there's some different levels of ego state. Um, but our upbringing, how much we were nurtured by our parents, that will influence us quite a bit. And I'll give you an example there. We all know the phrase, look both ways before you cross the street.
Yeah.
So, you heard that from your parents. I heard that from my parents. Um, but we might have heard that at different levels growing up.
Hmm.
So if your parents really control that situation, I'm not a psychologist.
Yep.
Um, if your parents were really holding you to that high standard, your aversion to risk was going down. You were pretty. I'm sorry, it was going up. You were pretty risk averse. You were not going to take chances. If my parents kind of let me run amok outside, I might have a higher level of risk. Some of those, what we call tapes, they were created in our youth, from birth till maybe about age 6.
Yeah.
Those will carry forward and they will have an impact on us. Um, but usually we don't see what that is until, later in life
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah. Well, some people never figure it out. I mean, that's the famous subconscious wiring that's laid down. Bruce Lipton wrote the book,
Hmm.
The Biology of Belief, but he's got some great YouTube videos on this topic where, kids literally are in theta state till 6 or 7 years old, which is essentially a state where they're just downloading life,
Yeah,
right? It's almost like they've been hypnotized and they're just taking everything in. And so people pick up some good and bad tape recordings along the way, and
absolutely. Yeah.
it's in the way. And I think, what do you tell people about being reflective, let's say, thinking about, what happened and what can they do differently?
It's a huge challenge in the world of selling. It is where tremendous breakthroughs occur. So I look at the world of sales in a couple of different lights. One being, obviously, we're going to teach folks process, technique. When they learn that stuff, they're going to be hopefully uh, chiming along and really producing great results. When people can uncover some of the ego state, what we call head trash from that tapes and from
Yeah.
that wiring, and they can uncover some of their earlier beliefs that were hardwired in, become aware of it, reflect on it, and then change. Now it's difficult, but be aware and make adjustments around that. They're going to be way more successful. And I think a great example of that is I like to talk about money concept issues. Um, you know, folks that drive down the street and say, they heard their parents when they were in the car saying, I don't know how these folks afford that type of home. 20 years later, might be saying the same thing and are
Yeah.
going to struggle to get to maybe a high performing income level because of some of that tapes or some of those tapes that were wired in early on in life. So we've got to start to understand what are some of those messages that we've got from childhood, get them out, and somehow reframe that messaging that it's okay to be successful and live in that type of home. Again, if that's what your version of success is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then that that all flows into this whole notion of, what's your attitude, which is important no matter what you're doing in life, right? The
Yeah.
old Henry Ford thing: if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. I mean, you come across this obviously a lot in sales, and what are some of the things that you see and that people could learn from?
Oh, well, when it comes to attitude, it's we believe attitude impacts sales. About 70% of your results are impacted by attitude. Um, and it's really eye-opening when people start to uncover what's getting in their way. We do a lot of training on this. So you talked about ego states,
Yeah.
but things like my belief in my industry, in the economy, in my company, in myself. We love people to do evaluations on that rate themselves, try to figure out why they're struggling to say, hey, I think my industry is going to, skyrocket. If you don't think it's going to skyrocket, you might want to find a different industry. Um, we'd
I
like
think
for you to adjust
start
your
looking
attitude.
now.
What's that?
Start looking now,
Yeah, if you can't get over the hump, but we've got to uncover some of those things between our ears that might hold us back. I like to look at professional athletes. Actually, I read something a day or two ago that college and professional athletes, again, don't hold me to the stat, train and practice 5 times more than high school and other athletes. These are folks that are at the top of their game.
Yeah,
Why are they train? It comes down to that belief system. They're at the peak of their game saying, I can still incrementally get better. I think we should all operate from that space.
I do too. And, one of the attitude things that probably come up is that phrase, you can't lose what you don't have, right? People are maybe so afraid, in these interactions for it not to work out when,
Yeah.
really, what do you tell them?
Well, that is, one of our Sandler rules. You can't lose what you don't have. And I think a lot of sales folks get caught up in what they didn't win. In our world, getting a no is a great opportunity to learn a lesson. Learn a lesson and move on. Don't get focused in on the past. If I had all the money on things that I thought that I was going to win, I'd be retired. But we've got to be comfortable getting no's, and keeping our eyes focused on the things that we can actually win, attain, adjust going forward. It's a tremendous conversational point. When we bring that up with the folks that we train, we ask them, how do you feel about this statement? It is very eye-opening, some of the things that people will share. And a lot of it is they carry baggage. Hey, Frank, I would have had a great 2019 had I only won the ABC account. Well,
Yeah.
I can sit in that world, or I can sit in the world saying, you know what, Frank, here's what I learned about the ABC account in 2019. It's going to help me win this much more business in 2020.
Yeah, it's all attitude because,
Absolutely.
yeah, if you're stung by the loss, then you're not going to be very open to saying, what did I do wrong? Because you can't even accept the fact that it didn't work out, right?
I love the way you phrase that up. Yeah.
Um, so, how about, people who say it was the prospect's fault? They didn't listen, they didn't do something, you know?
I'll speak for David Sandler. It's never the prospect's fault.
Yeah,
It's always something we could have done differently. Um, David Sandler, there is a Sandler rule. There's no bad prospects, only bad salespeople.
yeah,
I think we've got to take more accountability, whether it's a prospect, whether it's an employee, and look at what we could have done differently. I think if we operate from that spot, we will continue to grow and continue to get better. I'm
yeah.
not saying take on undue pressures. I'm not saying take on undue responsibility. I want us to have high accountability, but look at it from that lens from time to time.
Yeah, and another Sandler rule I recall was, let's not blame a prospect for doing something they weren't not told they can't do, right? This is,
Exactly.
hey,
Exactly.
they didn't do XYZ, and in fact, there was no agreement they couldn't do that. So,
That's why we like the upfront contract.
yeah. How do you get into that upfront contract? You just say, look, I want to get an agreement with you on a number of things right up front.
I think I think the way you just said it would be okay. I think that's probably a little bit more formal than what I might do.
Yeah.
I think that the key there is as early as an initial interaction with somebody on the phone,
Mhm.
you want to start laying some of the ground rules for how this relationship is going to go, and not in a you know twisting the chokehold on you, but in an agreement. Hey, Frank, here's some of the things that are going to happen. Here's what the
Yeah.
next meeting looks like. Start laying the foundation that when we work together, we always have these agreements. Things will always be on the calendar. We'll have deadlines. I'll ask you a lot of questions. It's not tremendous heavy lifting, but it adjusts the accountability in the conversation.
Yeah.
We
It
want that at work too. In the workplace, I've seen, worked with managers, senior leaders, where they might even ask for, hey, Frank, I need the ABC report, um, without any expectation as to when you need it.
yeah.
Does that mean you need it in the next 20 minutes, or does that mean you need it by Friday? Those are two different things, could impact how we're working on things. So clarity is key.
Yeah. So that contract is important no matter what you're doing.
Tremendous, yes.
You're working with other people. It really should be clear on what people are working on. And, since we got into, the need to identify what the client's pains are, if you don't have any pain, you don't have any sale. In the world you operate in, Dave, please share some of the pains that your clients, are experiencing.
Yeah, and maybe folks can use some of these ideas to set up pains for their opportunities. But things that we solve for are people are frustrated. They put out a lot of proposals.
Yeah.
They're sending them out, and they're not getting responses back on them. Sometimes we have folks that um, do a lot of free consulting. They give away a lot of information. And at the end of the day, a prospect might say, hey, that was great. You gave me a lot of good information, but you know what? Now we don't need you.
Yeah.
Um, some other areas are folks, aren't sure how to find new opportunities. So how do they go out and find better opportunities, new opportunities to build that pipeline so they have more swings to close business? So when we talk about pains, that's what we solve for. But that's the type of language we want our clients speaking in their industries with their
Yeah.
prospects.
Yeah. Very, 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 pardon me, very true. Yeah, you see everything ultimately, and it is a lot of it is pain that's driving things, right? That whole notion of, pain now or pain in the future, these buying motives. What should people be aware of when they want to think about these buying motives? What are
Yeah. So I want to understand if you have an issue today, the bigger your issue is today, um, the chances of us doing business are going way up. If your issue is somewhere in the future,
they? Hmm.
somewhere 6, 12, 18 months down the road, if I can't bring that back to relate to today, I need to build steps to get there. But my likelihood of closing that deal has probably gone down. So what does that mean? That means I want to listen for things that are occurring today.
Hmm.
The more that's happening today that's creating pain or issues, I want to hone in on. And if it's happening in the future, I've got two choices. Either bring it back to today. Maybe if we start doing something about the issue today,
Yeah.
it'll avoid an issue down the road, or build a program, a cadence that carries me to the date when that pain will absolutely need to be solved for.
Yeah. So, this is just selling is so important, as I said earlier, in any part of life. And that's why I had you on. I know Sandler does offer these kind of introductory classes where people can come and get a lesson to learn what the Sandler system is. Um, I would recommend anybody to do it, and they should try to find you online. We'll certainly put this down there. You're just tell them how to get in touch with you.
Sure, the easiest way to get in touch with me is by phone, 732-789-5409, or email is dtrapani@sandler.com. And if folks do end up reaching out, we can connect them as appropriate.
Yeah. And certainly, yeah, go to Dave. He'll connect you if, whatever the case may be. There are Sandler franchises all over. So maybe another one is perfect for you. And, Dave always does what's in the best interest of everyone.
Absolutely.
Real interesting today. Any parting thoughts for our audience?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think a couple of things that you hit on that I often don't get asked. Building that rapport, so the listening elements,
Yeah.
paraphrasing, and the use of words versus body language, critical. And I think the attitude. Sometimes if we can evaluate some of the noise in between our ears, we can uncover where an issue um, might be emanating from, and perhaps solve it between our ears, which just makes the opportunity to fix that go way up.
Just that much better.
Yep.
Well, what could we say? Happy selling, Dave, to you, and happy selling to you, our audience. Thank you for listening in.